We're installing Paver base panels today. If you're using large format tiles like me, you need to watch this video because they provide a huge advantage, which we'll talk about today. Because these things are about kajillion pounds. The Nextbase is worth it. Just literally from you can set them down and slide them. Which you can't do on sand, but I think this will be really nice. I was asked to transform my parents' backyard, and that's what we're doing. I'm putting in a massive 40-foot by 16-foot paving stone patio that is absolutely stunning. In past videos, we've removed the existing deck, chopped out an old tree stump, and filled the area with gravel. We mixed bagged concrete and poured pads to extend the existing concrete. Let's get into it. All right, yesterday afternoon, we ended up getting all of the concrete in. Looks pretty good. So it's still a little bit soft, so we're probably not going to be doing much on it today. So what we have today coming in is we have sand to go in, and then we'll put the Nextbase on top of that. We'll start at this edge here, work out this way to get this all covered up, because then the dog can go on it. So we'll put that down, get that done. I'll pull the forms here for all the concrete that we put up, and then we should be good to go. Come back here, we have a pallet truck. We'll move that one pallet up to here. Hopefully that'll let us get the trailer back, and then that way we can keep going. But we'll get stuck into doing some cleaning up here this morning. We were able to pull the concrete forms as well. It was nice that everything came off really easily. The concrete looked great, and it worked really well with the edging, how we fastened it. We needed screeding boards to put a sand pad down. The base that we're using can be used directly on the gravel, but since we needed to match the concrete height exactly, it was the best way to ensure that the levels matched. We have a board that spans the whole thing, rests on one side of the concrete over there, comes over to here. We leveled this board, and then I just screwed in a 2x4 on the edge here to run along this metal edging because it's been leveled. So we have one for the longer length, one for the shorter length. The Nextbase is underneath it, which needs 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to take both these boards. I have some metal edging left over. Have it lower by 3/4 of an inch. And then that will allow us to screed the sand exactly the level we need. Grab a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, line it up on this edge. This comes here, can sit on the edging. Okay, so it sits on the edge there. Yeah, air underneath the whole thing. I'll do a quick scrape here. So, gotta do the long one, and then we're good to go. We needed the height of the patio to be exact, so I used a screeding board to scrape the gravel since it was a little high in some spots. This made sure that when we came to doing the sand, it would smooth slidely rather than catch on the rocks. You can see how much gravel we had to remove. If we wouldn't have done this step, our patio wouldn't have been at the same level as the pad. With the width of this section, 2 people made sliding the board so much easier. Since we only needed a little bit of sand to get the correct level, I started by sprinkling it with a shovel. Obviously, I needed much more than that, so in came the wheelbarrow. I had hoped our scraping got rid of the high spots, but there were several that needed rocks to be taken out by hand. Instead of picking them out one by one, I just tossed the sand that had gravel mixed in. We had lots of sand, so to lose it wasn't much of a concern. As you screed the sand out, there are areas that show clear low spots. I built up a pile of sand and then moved it out. As you pull the sand, it'll fill those low spots. You can then go back, add more sand where you didn't have enough, and repeat the process again. Make sure your compactor plate is completely clean or you won't have smooth results with the sand. You can see how much the screeded out sand compacted. If I would have laid the base and then the pavers over this, it would have caused a huge drop in the patio at the concrete edge. When you're compacting sand, you have to move smoothly with the compactor. If you pull too tightly or use an edge to pull back, you'll just pull the sand out of the way. Another thing to ensure is that your sand is a little bit moist. Dry sand will not compact at all. The problem is, saturated sand won't either. It has to be in between. This might have been a bit dry, but you can always take out a hose and spray it down for this compaction step. Now that we have compacted once, we need to bring the level of the sand back up. We add more sand and screed it out again. I'm only doing half the patio right now, but we'll do the other half afterwards. So here's the idea. This is the Nextbase set down on the sand pad, and this is almost dead flat. Yeah, just pressed in. So I think what we're going to do, I'm going to run the plate compactor just here along the edge. Maybe do one more screed out. But you can see there's a pretty good pattern on here. So it's making firm contact with the ground. So maybe I'll run the packer over this, throw one more layer of sand over, screed it one more time, and call it a day. You can see how I'm building up little hills running the packer over this. I'm probably running into the area of diminishing returns here, but I wanted it to be perfect. I found that circular patterns work best for using the compactor to push the least sand out of the way. This sand was probably a little bit too dry and could have used a little bit of sprinkling. On these repeat sand screedings, I just needed to sprinkle a little bit of sand over it. I wasn't adding much, and you can see how nicely it finished out. On this last pass, I found pulling a fair amount of sand back worked best to get a nice finish. Okay, so we'll probably take a break and then get started on the patio in the afternoon. This second section was much closer to the level that it needed to be, so I didn't have to put a ton of sand down in order to bring it up to the proper level. A quick screed out was enough before my first compaction step. Now that we're in the afternoon, the sand has dried out a lot, and I really should have sprayed some water on it to get something that was easier to work with. This section ended up being so much more difficult to deal with due to how close to the final level the gravel actually was. Several times I needed to go back to pick rocks to make sure the patio had a nice, even base to lay on. So we got a packed layer of sand, and then another screed layer. There's a couple rocks up here, but it's kind of the best I can do. It'd be better to have it. It says on the package that you can do 1/4 inch of sand, and we did more like a 1/2 inch. We kept catching the aggregate. So if I did it again, I'd probably do more like 3/4 to 1 inch. Now for the Nextbase. Okay, I've been led to believe this is super easy. I want to go this way. Just lays down. And then it has an interlocking edge here, and then we should be able to just interlock it. These are not the same way. These are. Is this upside down? It's upside down. So no, that doesn't work for me. Anytime I start a new job that I've never done before, there's a lot of hesitation. I get over this fairly quickly because in this case, it's a miniature version of laying subfloors or ceramic tiles. Just much easier. There are massive advantages to these panels over sand for the final base surface that we'll talk about too. Yep. Installing these paver base panels is really easy. Start from the left, put a full panel in, and then the next panel to the right just interlocks with the first. Each panel has a top shiplap style interlock to the left and a bottom interlock on the right. I worked my way across to the right, putting in enough panels to complete the first row. I trimmed the panel using a knife and a framing square at the end. I did not worry about support under the tongue of the first panel since the smallest paver I would be using was a full 12 by 12 inch. If you want to use this under small cobble style pavers, I would consider trimming off the tongue on the first row. On the second row, if your offcut piece is wide enough, start your next row with it. This will make sure that the seams of the panel do not line up and will make the whole base one solid surface. If you don't have enough offcut, take a piece and cut it in half and start with a half piece. I'll show you in a little bit, but even though the base panels expanded due to the heat, they all stayed as one solid surface and returned to normal after the sun went down. That's the main purpose of this type of underlayment, that if you have any soft spots underneath or any areas where you don't have perfect compaction, the base will form a solid panel that all your tile will sit on, and then it doesn't sink into that one small spot where you don't have enough compaction. So all I'm doing here is bringing this up against. This is my good edge, it's going to go there. So I'm marking here where it's going. I'm going to leave a little bit of flex on this one. Taking it there, that's my mark. I come back in the shade, line the square up on the mark, and then use a knife to cut. This is really hard to do in film at the same time. You can snap it, and then usually XPS foam will just break, but this has some sort of rubberization on it. You can fold it. Back cut the back, and then this should, if you did it right, just slide in like that. Okay, that's done. Now you can take this piece, and start your new row with it. All right, we got all this installed. It's nice and firm-ish, I guess. I don't know. But it's nice and even level. The edge is a little bit floppy because this is just a tongue right here. You can actually see on this how much it's expanded once it got in the sun. Yeah. So we'll have to trim this back. I'm back at it again, installing the rest of the paver base. It's really nice to be able to quit anytime and be able to go back right into installation. This front section was the same as the rear, full piece alternating with a half piece and easy cuts on the end. This is a very quick base to install. This whole 144 square foot area only took less than half an hour, not counting the sand pad. That's so much quicker than screeding sand. Laying the sand and screeding it out for the same area took a few hours. I think if we would have been installing this over a larger section, it wouldn't have even added very much time. 80% of the time is doing the end cuts, not laying the panels themselves. Now let's finish off our last row where everything needs to get cut. It's obviously too big. That line is actually not a bad mark. That'll give us a little bit of flex in the front, flex in the back. I'm just going to cut it on that. Yeah, now it's snapped. Perfect. This can come out. Can go in here, kick it over. So, last piece. Get it slid in there. I don't know how this is so far off. So I might cut that. I'd like that tighter. It doesn't really matter. It's going to get buried and the stone will go up higher than it anyway. But I'd like to get it a little bit closer than that. One thing this stuff does is as it gets in the sun, it curls up and it does expand a little bit, but mostly it just humps up. I'm assuming that once you put some blocks down, it'll be okay, but it's pretty hot today. But you can kind of get a look how lumpy it is. It was dead flat, especially this area that we did first. And kind of everything in the shade is still okay. We'll hopefully get some weight on this and then go from there. It feels really good underneath though. It doesn't feel like it's uneven. It feels good here. Like we're a 1/4 inch expanded there, but I'll just run a knife along the edge here and then cut it a bit once I deal with this corner. All right, Nextbase is done, ready to go. I fixed this wall. I just trimmed it, but this is all in, looking really good. We have a lot of mess to clean up here. I want to get some pavers down on this Nextbase just to stop it from moving around. We'll start the edge of the pavers. The pattern will start here so that if this patio drops at all, which it might, like this could be 1/8 of an inch low, then the concrete, it'll drop independently of this. So if this drops a little bit, that's okay. If it's a little bit off level here, that's okay. This slab is pretty bang on level. This slab flows out towards the garage. All right, well, I guess next is all of these guys over here. Got a yard of sand instead of a half yard, so he's gonna go take that back. But we got the borders, the mains, and then all of these to deal with. But I think this will be really nice. So the big advantage I see with this base, you can set the stones down wherever you want it and slide. Which you can't do on sand, because as soon as you do that, you push the sand out of the way. So I think that's actually a really nice feature of this stuff. Now, I'm gonna be pretty fussy here to start, because these things are about 80 pounds each, maybe 100 pounds each. For these big ones, kajillion pounds. Well, I think that the Nextbase is worth it, just literally from you can set them down and slide them. I completely understated the advantage here. Hindsight after doing the whole patio, I would never do a large format paver on a straight sand bed. I tried dropping them right next to each other later so that they didn't have to slide, but it was almost impossible since they were so heavy. I started as a skeptic when Dad brought this stuff home, but this whole process has turned me into a believer. Next time, we're laying the whole patio. Things did not go according to plan.